Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. It's 12:01, and we will get this meeting of the Corporate Services Committee started. I will start by asking you to hold on one second. Apologies, I have my agenda on screen and I don't have the things written down that I need to say to start the meeting. So first of all, City Hall is temporarily closed to the public for in-person attendance at standing and council committees, but meetings can be viewed via live streaming on YouTube and the city's website, which is london.ca. The City of London is committed to making every effort to provide alternate formats and communication supports for council, standing, or advisory committee meetings and information upon request. To make a request for any city service, please contact accessibility@london.ca or 519-661-2489, extension 2425. To make a request specific to this meeting, please contact csc@london.ca. Thank you. And with that, and if I'm a little bit more muffled today, it's because I have two masks on, so I will try to speak as clearly as possible. And I'm looking for disclosures of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, we have a number of consent items. I wonder if any committee members would like to pull some of those consent items. Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like for a separate discussion and vote 2.5, please.
So we'll pull 2.5. Anybody else? Okay, so I'm looking for a motion for all of the consent items with the exception of 2.5. Mr. Mayor is moving it, seconded by Councillor Pelosa. Any comments on the consent items? Councillor Councillor Van Holst.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a few questions. For 2.1, that was an RFP, and I'm wondering if I could ask through you to staff why that might not have just been a tender. I know that.
Okay, go to staff.
Thank you, and through the chair. We selected an RFP as opposed to an RFT based on the diversity of requirements associated with this kind of work. It also allows us to understand service level agreements to a greater degree, where a tender is held more specific to technical items. Thank you.
Councillor?
Thank you. So maybe just a couple of the comments. I see that our provincial dedicated tax refund is up to 4.6 from 3%. I think that's good news for London. I appreciate that we were able to also take advantage in 2.3 of $133,000 of some of funds that were available to us. So thanks for that. And I believe that was it 2.4 that was pulled, Madam Chair?
It was 2.5.
2.5. Okay, 2.5. Yeah. So our strategic plan variance report just talks about being transparent, and I know that we had been criticized for a lack of transparency in a recent. A recent report, and I know there were some reasons why that may not have been as valid a concern as made in that report. And I wondered if through you, our staff could just comment on that allegation. I think it'd be worth hearing something publicly.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll go to Ms. Barbone.
Thank you. Through the chair, the counselor is referring to the recent CD Howe report that was released on accountability and transparency. This report is done annually, so this is not the first time that this report has come to our attention. It's been a long-standing annual report that they do. The criteria on which this report is based is very, very narrow. It looks very much specifically at specific factors, and it only looks at two documents that the City of London provides. It looks at the City of London property tax document as well as the City of London's financial statements. So it doesn't look at any of the other processes of which the city essentially follows throughout the year, and it does not look at the City of London's water and wastewater budget, which is also done separately. So one of the challenges with the report that results in the City of London receiving such a poor grade is the City of London's multi-year budget process, because they look at one of the primary criteria that they look at is that they want the City of London's budget document passed before the end of the year, which is something that we strive to get it done as early as possible. However, certainly in the year of a multi-year budget, there's a great deal of engagement and 4 years of budgets that council reviews and debates. So as you can appreciate, in 2020, that took a very, very significant amount of time, and we'd be starting far too early to have it done before the end of the year. So that was certainly one challenge. The other challenge that the City of London faces is that we do a separate budget for the City of London's water and wastewater. So this is certainly something we have challenged with them, is that they believe there should be one document and one budget done for all of the City of London's taxation, notwithstanding that the rate supported budget is separate. And one of the primary reasons why we have it separate is so that taxpayers are more transparent in understanding exactly where their tax dollars go and why the rate supported is different, and particularly exactly what their water rates and sewer rates are paying for. So that is certainly something else. And then obviously COVID impacted our financial statements being a little bit later than normally as a result of trying to do everything online, and that took our staff a little bit longer. So the financial statements were approved in September instead of June when it typically does occur. So all of those factors contributed to a much lower grade than certainly all of us would have liked. I think one of the key premises in the report is based on is that it wants the City of London, or believes all municipalities should do their budgeting based on the same format as your financial statement policies, which is also something that the municipal finance officers of Ontario have discussed, and they have issued a letter in support of all of the challenges with this annual study that is done, and why City of London, I guess, and all municipalities, financial statements and budgeting are in fact very, very different. Financial statements have a very important purpose, but to base your financial statements on how you collect tax dollars is something that they're very much quite different in terms of the purpose that they have, and certainly financial statements are based very much on historical uses of cash. They do not look to the future, which is what taxation is, to ensure that we have and are recovering from the taxpayers only what we require over the future year to ensure that we're not overtaxing. So there are many reasons why financial statements are extremely challenging to understand. This report suggests that we should tax based on our financial statements, which would make our financial statements, for many reasons, are not viewed by the public as something that is very easy to understand. So one of the key things we try to strive is to try to make our budget document as simple and as easy to understand, so that the taxpayer understands exactly what we're collecting tax dollars for. And some of the policies that are utilized in a financial statement do not support the uses of tax and the taxation that we would have, that we collect for, particularly as we're trying to support our capital assets and life cycle maintenance of those assets over the long term. And one of the things I think financial statements do not capture well is our infrastructure gap. And although our primary investment is within our capital projects, that is not something that financial statements reflects, as it only shows what the historical costs of those capital projects have been and not what it costs to replace infrastructure in the future. So hopefully that helps. If anybody wishes to look at the Municipal Finance Officers of Ontario website, there is a very good letter from all of the board on MFOA that has a number of reasons as to why this report is not extremely useful in actually trying to support better accountability and transparency to the taxpayer.
Thank you, Ms. Barbone. Councillor Van Holst, are you good?
Thank you very much. I'm very happy with that answer, and I think I would be happy to give our city a passing grade. I'm sure my colleagues would agree, and Londoners as well. We have very detailed reporting, and we're attempting to be as transparent as possible. I think if we prepare two documents and you refuse to look at one, well, then you can't really accuse us of being untransparent. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Mayor.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'd like to also thank Councillor Van Holst for his comments. And just in keeping with the same spirit, I'd like to give staff and the city a AAA rating for the way that they've handled our finances, the same way that Moody's has for some 44 years now. And I don't think that can be lost on any of us, that from the standpoint of finance and how we are sensitive not only to how we collect and pay, but also to report the tax implications of everything we do. If there's anything I've appreciated about this council and about this administration, is about how we go above and beyond in terms of full disclosure as well. So AAA rating to staff and to the city. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any other comments? Deputy Mayor Morgan.
Yes, and I wanted to weigh into this as well now that Councillor Van Holst has raised it, and I do want to ask a subsequent question of our treasurer through the chair, of course. And I'll say that the treasurer and her team are very, very smart, and so that answer that was given to Councillor Van Holst's question was complex, multi-layered, and unfortunately, I think much of the message kind of gets lost in the size of it. So I wonder if the treasurer could give just one specific example of why it is better the way we do it now, for transparency and frankly for collecting the right amount of tax. The treasurer and I have discussed a piece of infrastructure like roads and how it would be treated differently under the way that CD Howe would suggest we do our budgeting and how we do our budgeting now. And I wonder if the treasurer could explain it with just one example so that it's very clear on what we're talking about here.
Okay, Ms. Barbone.
Thank you through the chair, and I apologize for the long-winded answer because yes, there is a lot that goes into trying to unravel the response. So for a very simple and I guess concrete example, what I would use is just our roads and our road infrastructure, which is obviously one of our biggest assets in the City of London. And that when we basically do the roads, and obviously those last a very long period of time, those are considered to be capital assets. So those are recorded on our financial statement at the cost that we incur to build those roads and the infrastructure beneath the road that we do at the same time. So when that gets recorded on our financial statements, those get recorded at the cost that we pay, and over a period of time, the financial statements record those as amortization to show the use of those roads and the depreciation that occurs over time. And over time, the City of London will have to build new roads and will need to pay for the infrastructure that goes underneath it potentially 30, 40 years later. So when the City of London is looking at the taxes and looking at our entire capital plan, we are looking at a 10-year capital plan, and what we do is we save over time over knowing what it's going to cost in the future, and this is oftentimes referred to as our infrastructure gap, in that the money that it's going to require in the future to rehabilitate our assets and those roads when that road is no longer viable to drive on anymore is going to cost more in the future. So when we save slowly and incrementally over time so that we have, when that road needs to be built again, we have the right amount of money so that we can rebuild that road. If we were to do it based on the way CD Howe is suggesting, they're suggesting that we would essentially use debt over a period of time to pay for that, which is very, very expensive because obviously interest rates over that period of time, if you start to not plan for it, you're going to have to incur debt because you don't have the money that you've earned over the taxation over a period of time to pay for it. So the way we do it at the City of London is based on our capital plan, and we have a portion that funds our infrastructure gap, and we look at doing this slowly over time where we're incrementally trying to reduce the amount of our infrastructure gap so that we're collecting the taxes slowly in advance of when that road needs to be built, so that when we have to build the road, we have enough money through our capital levy and through our taxation operational requirements so that we're not paying debt on just resurfacing that road. So in the end, this strategy certainly costs us far less in the long run, which is a benefit to try to save our taxpayers money over the collective period of our capital plan. And we do that for a number of our assets, but that's certainly probably the easiest example, rather than waiting till that debt has to be issued. And if we were to issue everything in debt, this is something that I would just add, many, many years ago, the City of London used to pay for all its life cycle renewal through debt. And we were getting to the point where we were actually going to lose potentially our AAA credit rating because we were incurring too much debt for our life cycle renewal of our capital assets. So I think certainly this has been one of our key strategies that we've been working incrementally towards over time to try to ensure that we have the right balance of funding through debt and through our taxation for the upcoming year, so that we're minimizing the cost overall to the taxpayer and ensuring we have enough money to support those assets when required.
Thank you for that. And I think that was, I think it was helpful to use a specific example and walk through it. And I appreciate that. I will say the two things I would emphasize in this is one, the way we do it is that we budget for what the asset is actually going to cost us to replace, not what it cost us before. And that is a very transparent and good thing. So Londoners know how much tax we're going to need from them in the future. And the other thing about debt is often the report will show the city having a significant surplus on the financial statement side of things. And that is because we are collecting and saving money for what it is going to cost us for the road, not what it cost us when we originally built it. And so we will, through that process, generate what is a surplus because we're actually saving for the amount that we need in the future. So I think these are key points. I know it's complex and it's really easy just to say, the city got an F, it's not transparent, but it is much more complicated than that. And I feel the way we do it now is much better for taxpayers, both financially, as well as from understanding and being able to give us feedback on the budget, because we're basically budgeting for what we're going to ask them for in the future instead of relying on debt.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other comments or questions on the consent items? They are all on the floor. Councillor Van Holst.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And through you, just one more about, you know what, I actually got a note here. This is for 2.5. We're going to be discussing that. So I'll just wait. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay. I just want to add my thanks as well to the City Treasurer for those responses, especially, and Deputy Mayor Morgan for asking for a specific example, because it is very complex. And we know when we see the budget itself, when we see the budget in its entirety, it's like that thick. So there's a lot to go through. I've always been very amazed and delighted at our finance staff and the amount of work and detail that they put into our budgeting process and helping counselors and the general public understand the kind of engagement that goes on to make sure we're being transparent. And I just want to echo your comments, Deputy Mayor, on roads as a very good example, because we know the costs of construction in general and how important it is to budget appropriately, and those costs are rising much faster than regular inflation. So to budget our roads based on past costs would not be responsible. So with that, as long as nobody has anything else to add, we have a motion on the floor that's been moved and seconded, and it's all the consent items except for item 2.5. So I'll call the vote on that.
Madam Chair, I'll vote yay.
Okay.
I also didn't log into eScribe, and I'll vote yay as well, but I'll do that right now.
Thank you.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
So that brings us to item 2.5, which is the London Community Recovery Network Ideas for Action. And
Thanks, Chair. I did. First, I'd like to acknowledge the efforts of staff as they pulled together a number of the ideas that came through the London Community Recovery Network. And these are specific actions that are to be considered by Council. I have a question, if I can, as it relates to the first couple of items, specifically ideas for action 1.7 and 1.8, and it may ultimately reference or apply to others, and that is this. We talk about the very important need to support local, and I don't think anyone would argue how critically important that is during this pandemic and frankly on an ongoing basis. Anyone that has any touch with small business, particularly, and medium business, really understands the importance of this, but this focuses on local. And I think that's appropriate. But I wonder whether staff has considered the issue of local and licensed businesses in London. And I make that point, Chair, because I'm referring back to an article that the London Chamber of Commerce penned to the London Free Press on November 14th of 2020. And they talked about the very destructive components of the underground economy. That is to say, when we have folks who, and I'm just going to steal a couple of quotes here, in terms of the ability to help move our city along. And there are many that, and frankly, the challenge of the underground economy is how it displaces individuals and genuine employers who go through the process of registering their companies, paying their fair share of tax, ensure that there are that if there are health concerns associated with any food-related products, whatever it might be, that this is a system that's intended to take care of dealing with the issue of the underground economy. What's not lost on me is that the impact of lost GDP, gross domestic product, which impacts everything from taxation to, but the underground economy is worth, in Canada, $123 million a day. It's huge. So my question to staff is, has the issue of licensed in addition to local been considered, particularly in those two items, but as it relates to the support of local business?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll go to city staff on that.
Oh, sorry, through you, Madam Chair. It's Adam here.
Go ahead.
I'll take a stab at that one. So we are, in in the city manager's office, we keep a pretty good handle on sort of the conversations that are going on in the community. We're well aware of the article and the letter that the mayor has referenced. Through the course of defining the implementation plans for the ideas, what we've identified in these two ideas specifically are to work with existing businesses to identify opportunities to promote spending local for the economy. It's sort of assumed that the businesses we'd be working with when we were thinking through these plans, we would be working with businesses that are readily identifiable, that have a public profile, and that who contribute to organizations and associations that do this work to promote purchasing local. So we, in the short answer to the question, we'll be working with organizations in the community, like the Chamber of Commerce, like the BIAs, who are advocating for or communicating the opportunities to spend in their businesses locally. So I hope that answered the question, but I can reframe if needed.
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor. You're muted, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Reframing might be a little bit helpful, Mr. Thompson, because, you know, I think it's critical that businesses meet their obligations to ensure that the tax fairness is there for everyone, and that's why the underground economy can be so deadly to all the legitimate businesses that pay their fair share, that pay their combination of employees associated with Canada Pension Plan and employment insurance and WSIB, all those kinds of things that often are evaded when someone doesn't register their business. And I'm making the point because I think this is really a critical piece to this. We can see it time and again how easy it is to accept the services of a supplier who says, I can do this under the table if you give me cash. And the devastating effect that has on every genuine business that tries to do it the right way. So if Mr. Thompson feels that that's sufficient for him to proceed accordingly, I will accept that. To me, it's a strong reminder of the critical need for all of us to support legitimate, licensed local business. So perhaps a brief response from Mr. Thompson, please.
Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair, we certainly agree. So we will take this back to the communications process to explore how to get these pieces off the ground. We're, you know, the ultimate goal here is to echo and amplify the messages that come from the community in support of local businesses. So we can work with some of the organizations in our community that have positions on this to make sure those points are kept in context with our work.
Yeah, it does. So Chair, perhaps again, final question to Mr. Thompson. Do you feel that you need something more from council to ensure that that this is done? I'm a bit of a bear on this simply because, you know, when I think of what business does in support of our healthcare system, our education system, and all the genuine things that make a community, and then these folks that don't do this the legal way, literally bypass the system. Do you think you need anything stronger to ensure that the recommendations of the LCRN will be fulfilled with legal licensed local business?
Mr. Thompson.
Through you, Madam Chair, we're in committee's hands, of course. The ideas that were put forward, as members of committee know, were put forward by the organizations that are members of LCRN. And I, you know, personally, from our work together, we feel like we could probably take the spirit of this concept back to implementing these plans, but of course, we're in the hands of committee for any additional guidance.
Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. And again, I feel like I'm belaboring it now just a touch more than need. If someone who isn't licensed and says it's my right to be part of this, do you feel you've got sufficient information and support from the committee to I'll say push back against those particular organizations? So, for example, bringing home the holidays, it's not uncommon for crafts and different folks to say, well, you know, I make this at home, or I can do this wreath here and there, or I can build something for the holiday season, whatever holiday it might be. And we're buying local, sure, but if we said, you know, that doesn't count because you're not a registered business, I guess I'm asking Mr. Thompson. I know you're in the hands of committee and council, but do you think you have sufficient information support from members of the committee to be able to resist anyone who might insist that just because they're a business that they would have the right to participate, even though they may not be licensed and legal?
Mr. Mayor, it's Ms. Livingston. I think we understand the direction and intent,
Yep.
and when we're issuing information about these strategies, we can be clear about who it does apply to.
Then I'll stop right there, and thank you, Mr. Thompson, for your work on it with the committee, and thank you, Ms. Livingston.
Okay, Councillor Van Holst.
Thank you. So this is a pretty easy decision today. None of the recommendations here have any financial impact. But I was wondering about one that I didn't see appear and maybe expected to come to this committee. There was the recommendation of in the prioritized ones for a food service delivery app. And I'm wondering through you if our staff could maybe comment on what happened to that idea.
Mr. Thompson.
I may just need 1 minute to pull up the reporting on where those ideas are going to which committee. So if you could bear with me a moment.
Madam Chair, if somebody else had a comment, I'd be happy to hear
Okay,
that.
so thanks, Councillor, while Mr. Thompson's looking that up, I'll go to Deputy Mayor Morgan.
Yes, I'm super eager because I'm pushing all the buttons accidentally in the reactions tab. Sorry about that. I did want to ask a question of our staff on these items. I know that they don't have any financial implication. In reading through them, I get a sense of the staff resources required. They don't seem significant for any of these, but I wouldn't mind if our staff through Ms. Livingston could comment on, you know, what the actual municipal resources are that would need to be deployed to support these items at committee.
All right, Ms. Livingston.
Thank you through you, Madam Chair, for the question. For an example would be of 1.8. This is calling on our communications resources. This is not something we would normally do. So this is undertaking some work with respect to that. Same with 1.7, although it's specific on holiday season, we would of course take the spirit of the intent, and it is staff time to work with local businesses, BIAs, to work through what this might look like. Just to give a sense of the level of resources that are supporting the overall efforts of the LCRN, we're talking about 20 plus staff that participate on the committees, work to identify the implementation plans and costing. You'll know that there are 4 reports across 4 committees this week, trying to address the breadth and depth of the recommendations from the community. So in each of these, it will require staff time, even in 3.3, where we're not suggesting it's ours to do, but we would try to be helpful and connect folks. It will take time of staff to do that. So that's what many of these, while they're not financial call on resources, they are a call on staff time.
And as a follow-up through the chair, I appreciate those comments. And my concern is, as this is divided across committees, it's going to be easy for the committees to look at these as, oh, these are the 4 at our committee. This is very easy. There's not a lot of cost. Let's just do them. And I'm worried about the cumulative resources that we're deploying. Not that I don't think we should deploy the resources in support of the LRCN, but I think we should do so strategically, appropriately, and at the right time. I will say across all of the committees, there's a number of items that do not have the urgency given the point we are at in the pandemic. There are others that are, I think, very critical at this time to move forward with. And so that's the spirit under which my question was asked, is being conscious that we've only got so much we can push behind this, and we've got to push it in a way that is going to be as effective as possible, given that this is just the first phase in this work. So I would say something like the group buying to lower the cost of PPE, very appropriate item at this point in the pandemic. This is an ongoing need, and if we can save costs for both us and others by doing some group buying, that would be great. The other ones I'm not overly concerned about at our committee because the resources seem to be low. The holiday one isn't going to be applicable for some time. To be honest, the Instagram takeovers, that's something that I think we could do. I'm unsure at this point on what the magnitude of the impact would be, but that's where my concern is these impacts cumulatively across all the committees, when they come as recommendations all to council, we need to be conscious of the amount of resources we're deploying at this point of time.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. That's just a comment, no question in there. Okay, great. Any other comments or questions on 2.5? Can I have a mover then? Okay, moved by Councillor Pelosa and seconded by the Mayor. Check one more time. No more comments or questions.
Just
Councillor Van Holst.
Just wondering now if Mr. Thompson has an answer with respect to my question.
My apologies, Councillor. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, I appreciate the patience in getting this answer. So the item the councillor talked about will be going to CPSC tomorrow, or CAPS tomorrow.
Awesome, thank you so much. So we have a motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded, and I'll call the vote.
Councillor Van Holst,
I'll vote yay, thank you.
closing the vote, and the motion carries 6-0.
Okay, that takes us to items for direction. There are no scheduled items. 4.1 is an application proclamation for Personal Support Worker Day. Any comments, questions? Mover, seconder? Councillor Van Holst? So Councillor, you got muted accidentally. Sorry, I see that you want to move it, but you had some more comments there?
Yes, thank you. I'm happy to move this. I have numerous friends who are personal support workers. They do very important tasks for us in the community and are a great help, and they certainly deserve this recognition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. A seconder? Seconded by Councillor Pelosa. Any additional? Okay, I see the mayor's hand. And there were a bunch of hands for second, so if you did want to comment, just let me know. Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. How can you disagree with not supporting personal support workers, particularly at this time? None of us will vote against this, I'm sure. What surprises me is that what I didn't see in the application for the proclamation was an effort by the organizer out of Alliston, Ontario, to reach out to local folks, to which we know there are many, of course, obviously. Even for New Year's Eve, we used a personal support worker to do the lighting of the lights, and so we understand that. And I don't think it would have taken much. And so while we know there's local recognition, I'm just a little disappointed that there wasn't an outreach to the local folks that we're going to be acknowledging through supporting this proclamation.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The day, I believe, is May May 16th, around there. So there's still time. They could definitely reach out to local organizations. Councillor Kayabaga.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to also speak on this proclamation. I think it shows great support for many workers in our community. I myself have family members who are support workers, so I'm happy to support this motion. And I think also one of the things that we have to consider when we're looking at applications that come from outside organizations is that perhaps there aren't enough groups that are organized locally that have been able to either be aware of the proclamation and apply in time, or have a working group that can support their proclamation. So I think all of these information and comments that we have made in the last couple of, I think it's been what, 2 years now or 1 year, will help us inform how we move forward with the policy. I'm not sure when it will be up for review, but perhaps we will have learned many different practices that we can use to continue to make these proclamations be more accessible to our community members and honor the different people who are looking to get the proclamation. So I just wanted to add that comment.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions? So I just want to say I agree with all the comments that have been made so far. I think this is a timely and maybe even past time thing that we can do from council. I know personal support workers sort of worked in the background, and their work became very apparent during the pandemic because they are the frontest of the front lines. I know right at the end of the last term of council, I brought forth a motion that was passed with regard to personal support workers, and it was something that, you know, people aren't aware of. Personal support workers work around the clock, and there were a number of them that were getting parking tickets overnight because of our overnight parking ban on city streets. And so some of their clients didn't have driveways or room in their driveways, and these workers had to work overnight caring for their clients. So what City Council did was give an exemption to personal support workers who were working in clients' homes overnight, so they're exempt from the that overnight parking ban during the fall and winter months. So there's a recognition that has been growing about the work that these people do and the sacrifices that they make on behalf of some of our most vulnerable people here in London and some of the people with greatest needs when it comes to healthcare. And the pandemic, again, has brought that out into sharp relief for everybody in the community to see the work that they've done, and they continue to do, and they've always done, and the risks that they take with their own personal health as well. So great proclamation for us to be issuing, and I'm very much in support of this. And I will see if there's any other comments. It's been moved and seconded, so I'll call the vote on that.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
So we have one final item on the deferred matters and additional business, 5.1, paid sick leave enhancement. Oh, okay. So this is an email that came to us last minute, and I'll go to Councillor Kayabaga.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just an email. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, my connection is telling me that it's out. So it was just, I got a few communications in the community asking that the City of London supports paid sick leave and encourages the government, both federal and provincial, to work together to come to an agreement on supporting what the labor unions and public health experts have emphasized. They have emphasized on the importance of paid sick days It is both a rights, labor rights issue and a vital part of helping to limit workplace spread to spread the virus. So I think it's important that we join also the call to ask both governments to work together to find an understanding to support community members to reduce the spread of COVID. So I think I have a seconder in Deputy Mayor Josh Morgan, and I'm happy to take any questions.
I'm just going to go to the city clerk, and she's going to read out what we're discussing right now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The motion is that the federal and provincial governments be advised that the Municipal Council of the Corporation of the City of London requests the two levels of government to work together to enhance paid sick leave for all in order to ensure that individuals are not forced to attend their workplace when they are ill, and therefore assisting in limiting the spread of illness, including COVID-19.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any discussion on this item? Deputy Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Kaibaga spoke to me about this, and I agreed to second it. I looked at the language in it, and I think it's a respectful approach to the other levels of government to try to make some movement on an issue that is a discussion point in other municipalities. There are other cities who have passed similar motions like this. And I think, the key part right now is the relation to the pandemic and COVID-19. Certainly, we don't want anyone to feel like they have to go to work because they don't have the proper benefits and enhance the potential spread of the virus. So as a measure related to public health, I think that this is something that both the federal and provincial governments could look into. And I think our respectful ask of them to do so is the appropriate way to proceed. So I'm happy to second the motion on this.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other comments or questions about this motion? So I have a question because I'm having issues with my email. I just wonder if, and I thought I heard the mover say that this is not just COVID related. I wonder if you could expand on that. So I know the emphasis right now and the environment we're in right now is that we don't want people going to work with symptoms of COVID. So what's
COVID related?
Sorry, go ahead, Councillor.
It is COVID related, Madam Chair.
So is it longer term as well, though? Is this supporting paid sick leave going forward, even if the COVID-19 is not active in our community?
I don't think that was included in the motion. I can understand where your concerns are, but I think I'll stick to the language of the motion.
Sorry, Councillor Hopkins, go ahead.
Yes, Madam Chair, I didn't want to interrupt the committee debate. I was just waiting to take my turn after I heard the debate. But if you are acknowledging me, I'd be happy to speak to this. And I do have a question, but as it relates to the motion itself. So maybe I'll start with that. And I'd like to know, how will we be advising? How will this, are we just making this proclamation or this announcement, or are we going to be sending a letter to the provincial and federal governments through you, Madam Chair, to whoever?
So if the motion itself says that the federal and provincial governments be advised that the Municipal Council of the Corporation of the City of London requests the two levels of government to work together to enhance paid sick leave for all, in order to ensure that individuals are not forced to attend their workplace when they are ill, and therefore assisting in limiting the spread of illness, including COVID-19. If it's, so Councillor Kaibaga, if it is only for COVID-19, then you might want to get rid of that word including and just say assisting in limiting the spread of COVID-19.
If it is okay with the seconder, I don't mind making that adjustment.
So instead of including, the clerk is suggesting during COVID-19.
And just to respond to also Councillor Hopkins' concerns, perhaps the clerk can advise us whether we need to send a letter or not, and what we would need to do to be able to have that communication sent to both levels of government.
Okay, I'll go
Thank
to the clerk. Yep.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Through you, Madam Chair, we would forward a letter with the resolution to the appropriate ministers at both the federal and provincial governments.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you as well. This is Councillor Hopkins, and I really appreciate that we will be sending out letters to both governments. I do want to speak to this. This is, first of all, thank you, Councillor Kawabanga, for bringing this forward. This has been a conversation at the AMO board. I chair the Large Urban Caucus, and that is something that we have been supportive when it comes to the Ontario big cities mayors. They have also brought forward a motion to have to highlight the crucial needs for paid sick time, so workers, particularly essential workers, do not choose to go to work sick due to economic hardship during COVID. And this is something that at the Large Urban Caucus, we have asked the AMO board to encourage both governments to work together to address this. It is something I've heard in my community. We know there are people that are able to stay home for 2 weeks. They can probably look and use their savings account to get that extra money, but there is a lot of people that aren't able to do that. And this is something that I would like to suggest a friendly amendment as well, that it be done as soon as possible. I think we know we're in COVID times right now. Waiting is something that we don't have time. And in the motion, if I could suggest a friendly amendment to after working, that the federal and provincial governments, I'm sorry, I'm just trying, I can't read the screen there. I'm just going to go back to my motion, that where we speak to that the City of London requests the 2 levels of government to work together. I would ask the friendly amendment be as soon as possible to enhance paid sick leave through all, in order to ensure the individuals. I know there's been an amendment to this as well. So I do think that is important, that both levels of government start speaking to one another about the importance of sick leave, that 2-week period, that workers are told to stay at home, but they don't get paid. And so if I'd like to go to the mover and the seconder and request that amendment.
Okay, Councillor. So to the mover and the seconder, this Councillor Hopkins has asked if you could add the words that the 2 levels of government work together as soon as possible to enhance paid sick leave for all. And that's your call if you want to add those words.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's a great amendment, but I would look to my seconder to see if he still wants to second if we add that amendment.
I have no objections to as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Okay, so the clerk has heard that and she'll add those words. Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Any other discussion on this motion? Councillor Lewis.
Thank you for recognizing me, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councillor Kawabanga, for bringing this motion forward. I'm just wondering if through you and Madam Chair, and I don't know whether perhaps Councillor Hopkins might have some thoughts on this or Councillor Kawabanga might have some thoughts on this. I'm just looking for some thoughts on what the role of the provincial government in particular might be envisioned to be in this, just because I know, from past life experience, employment insurance and those sort of income support programs are typically delivered federally, not provincially. So I'm just wondering if, I mean, I support where we're going with this. I'm just wondering if whether through AMO or with conversations that either the councillors have had with others about this motion, what the thought process is for the provincial government's role here.
Councillor Kaibaga, do you have a response to that?
That's a great question. I think that this is why we're calling on the federal and the provincial government to work together. This has been a question that's been posed to the provincial government in the last couple of weeks. But I also think that the federal government has some contributions to bring to it. So this is where, as a municipality, we're coming from. When the spread of COVID happens, we deal with it on a municipal level because it's happening locally in our cities, but they can make legislation and policies that would support the work that we're doing to try and reduce the spread of COVID. So I think it's important that they work together and figure that part out. So I don't work on the federal or provincial level. I wouldn't have that information handy.
Okay, we're good there.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for entertaining that. I see Councillor Hopkins has her hand up, and I wondered if she had some AMO insight to share with us too.
If I may, Madam Chair.
I just want to add that, some of the information that's out there and when this subject comes up in a media setting or publicly, that both levels of government are sort of tossing the ball back and forth. So it makes sense that the councillors would ask the two levels of government to work together. Councillor Hopkins, did you have something to add?
Yes, thank you for saying that, Madam Chair, because at the AMO board, we are having those conversations between those two governments, encouraging both governments to work together to deal with this issue as soon as possible. It's something that needs to be dealt with. And I know those conversations, and with the support of AMO and OBCM and other municipalities in this province, we're not the only ones that are bringing forward motions like this. So I think time will tell where this will go.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on this? Okay. We have a motion that's been moved and seconded. I will call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0. Okay, so there are no other items on our public agenda. We have 3 items on the confidential agenda, which are the reasons for going in camera are shown on the public agenda. I will look for a motion to go in camera. Moved by Councillor Pelosa and seconded by Councillor Van Holst. I'll call the vote on that. Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0. So get everything arranged for our confidential session, and I'll let you know when we are back in session. Thanks.